Alright, so now I have got my body sewn all the way around, and as you can see my armature, you can just see the tip of it sticking out the top here. I've also just put in my filling, so now you can see it's a lot thicker than he was before. And also, I did run out of thread partway through, so you can see I have a tiny little knot right there. I just knotted off my thread, cut off the extra, and then started again on the inside. I almost made it to the end. So now what I'm going to do is show you how to attach the head to your body. So I have the back of my head here, I have the front here. As you can see, I've glued it about halfway. I'll just show you how to do it on the other half. So what I like to do is, because we are going to need to sew these together, so I like to leave a little lip here without any glue, because sewing through glue is not easy. So all I like to do is just put a little line of my hot glue over the part of the hair I want to stick down, and then we just stick it, press it together, and it dries very nice and quick, and now your hair is attached. So if you don't have hot glue, again, you can use just white glue, but you will have to wait a lot longer for it to dry. Also, I have seen it done where people just sew around the hair, just like do little lines, not quite all the way to the edge of the hair. My experience with that is that it does tend to fray your tips, so depending on how detailed your hair is, it might not work the way exactly that you want it. It might not look quite as good at the end, but if you have thicker pieces of hair like I do here, or if you have a very straight haircut, then that probably will work out just fine for you. So the way that I always attach my head to the neck is just like this, basically. So I put my two pieces together, kind of line them up here, and then the one thing I forgot to do is I always put a little dab of hot glue around the edge of this, because it is a little bit sharp. I don't want it to accidentally push through my plushie and stab out, so I just make a little ball there and then just wait for it to harden just for a few moments. Also, if you cut it a little longer, you can kind of loop it down, wrap it around, and then you have that nice round edge at the tip. If you're using something like pipe cleaners, definitely do that, kind of wrap it around. If you don't have hot glue, it's probably going to be fine. It's just I'm a little, there we go, a little overly cautious with my guys. So what I'm going to do here is I have my two circles just kind of lined up. So I'm going to put one on the back of the neck here, the other the front of the neck here. And this is a little bit tricky. You just have to be a bit careful. I just kind of hold them in place. You'll see that my thread is still attached to my neck where I left it off. So I just go through, and then I just start, usually I start going through the back and then attach that part. And then when I come through, I'm just going to measure a little bit into the neck so that his head is moving, so it doesn't move nearly back as much. And then I'm going to pull it through part way into his face, if you can see where that needle is, and then just pull it through. And then to give kind of the same look as a blanket stitch, I just kind of loop it under and push it through the back, and then pull that tight. So now you can see it's attached right there, and that will start. And if you notice, I don't have the back of my hair on quite yet. This is partially because I want to be able to stitch through here, and a lot of the time your hair will come below where you're stitching. So it's a little more difficult to get your stitches to work, basically, if you have it in the way. Also, when you knot off at the end, it will make it easier just to attach your hair on top of that once we get there. So this is just basically a matter now of just continuing to move along the bottom of his neck, or the top of the neck, the bottom of the face. Be careful not to stab yourself when you go through the back. If you need to like flip every time to make sure where your needle is coming out is not where your finger is, definitely do that. That's part of why I like to come through the front, because I can see the needle here. and then if I push it through the back, if I wanted to, I could flip it before I push it through so I can see, and then flip it back. And you do kind of have to hold your head in place for the first part, otherwise you'll kind of tilt off to the side and you'll end up with kind of a quizzical expression, which could be cute too, actually, if that's what you're going for, by all means. So we just kind of go through and keep until we reach the end of his neck. And now you'll notice more or less it's attached. So now we just kind of, once we get to the edge of the neck, we're going to start with our blanket stitch again. Let's see, I think I have one more stitch here before I reach that point. Okay, so now that I've reached the edge of his neck, oh, my guys are sliding down a little bit, we're going to start just doing our normal blanket stitch around the rest of the face. So, where's my loop? It's a little awkward to be doing this while you have the body kind of hanging around here, but just spin it around how you need to make it the most comfortable for you, so that you don't lose your guy halfway through. So we're just going to do around the edges. And the most important thing here is to make sure that you just take your time to do it right. I'm kind of going quickly here. I have made, as you can probably tell by the sheer number of plushies I've had in these videos, I have a lot of experience at this point in time. I've spent many, many hours working on these plushies. So I've kind of gotten to that point where I'm very comfortable doing this, and I can, well, first off, sew and talk. But especially if this is your first time, if you're not super comfortable with sewing or with making the plushies, if you don't have a lot of experience, just take your time, make sure it looks nice, you know. There's no rush, there's no time limit, it's not an assignment that you have to have done at a certain time. So now that we're getting to the hair, you'll notice I just kind of pull the hair away, just kind of pull it forward a little bit, and you have my bits where I didn't glue. And this is why we want to make sure that we don't glue all the way to the edge, because, oh, that one just looped automatically for me. Because that way we can actually get through the two pieces of skin color felt and sew those together without sewing through the hair. Because we don't necessarily want to have the look of stitches just coming across the top of our head in the hair. It would look a little bit funny. If you go around the edges of the hair itself, that's a totally different matter, but just to have a weird like headband in the middle is not necessarily a good look. So we just kind of pull it down, just hold that out of the way as you're doing your loops. So I'm going to continue around until I get to about here, to the edge of my hairline, and then that's when we're going to stuff. So I'm just going to get to that point, stuff it, and then finish up, and I'll show you how to do the last couple stitches and knot it off and then attach the back of the hair. Alright, so now I've got him sewn to about here. I ran out of thread again, so I just knotted it off, and I'm going to start a new one to sew up the last bit. I started to fill up the fluff that I have. I just want to show you, so like, if you're going to use a pencil or something, so what you would do, with the head it's easy enough to just do it with your fingers, but you would just kind of partially put it in there, and then just kind of use alternating your finger and the pencil to just kind of wiggle it in, and just get it into the side of your plushie. The last little bit's always easiest with the fingers, honestly. So now that I have his head completely stuffed, I'm going to start my thread again so that I can finish up the last little bit. So again, I just ran out of thread, so I just started a new one, made a little knot at the end, and then I'm just going to put it into the inside of the plushie, as you can see right there. Pull it through, and then just kind of start my blanket stitch again. So I just loop it once, and then just kind of continue. I'm going to work on the back here, it's easiest for me. loops until we meet up with the last, or the place where we started our thread. I have just space for one more little loop. There. So now that I have his face completely, spare little bits of felt. Now that I have his face completely sewn, you can kind of squish around to kind of redistribute the felt because it gets a little squashed while you're sewing it. And then all I'm going to do is just finish off my thread. So I'm just going to do it in the back because I'm going to put my hair on top. So we just find a loop, a previous stitch, and just kind of push it under that and then through, and then I'm just going to loop it through my thread twice and then pull it tight, and that will knot off my thread. And we can just snip off the excess and his head is attached. So now all I have to do is attach the back of his hair. So the way I did it was so the hair would line up. So you just have to put it, let's see, is it this way? Nope, it's the other way. Okay, so you just have to line up your hair. You can either pin this in place to hold them together or just kind of freehand it. I personally like to attach my hair best with hot glue. I think it just kind of looks neatest for me. So what I tend to do is just kind of glob a bit of hot glue on the back just to make sure I hold it in place, and then put it on. And then it will stay wet enough for a minute to just kind of wiggle it around if you need to line up the sides any better than you have. Okay, and then, let's see, just attach the bottom part, same thing, kind of glob some glue on. Oop. Spider webs of hot glue going everywhere, and just kind of attach it flat. So then all you have to do is go back over the ends and just put little bits of glue just to keep your ends together so that they don't pull apart. And then we just glue here, push them together. And I do recommend only doing a couple at a time, or a little bit at a time, because it does dry quick, and once it's dry it won't stick. So I'm just going to continue, obviously finish doing that around, and then once we have him all glued, I have decided I'm going to call this little guy Toshi because, well, it's ToshiCon, and I'm not really basing him off of any particular character, he's just kind of a random. But I think we need to give Toshi some clothes now, so that will be our next step.